Okay, all right.
I'd say it does.
Yeah, numbers, good.
Want something to steal it and borrow against it. Let's roll.
So we're all honored guests.
Just the smart people today.
That's right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming this afternoon. Thank you for being hooked in. I am Vicki Jackmore. I'm an advisor with Catholic United Financial. I know a few of you from the last workshop. That's beautiful. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about long-term care planning. And so I'm a bit familiar with it. My mother-in-law, Sweet Josie, is 97. She passed away about almost 2 years ago. She didn't plan for long-term care. She was of the mindset that she had funding and she was going to go ahead and take care of it. But life threw a hook, and at 92 she had to go into a facility because she could no longer take care of herself. She started having issues with dementia. That started in an assisted living component and very quickly escalated to a memory unit. Does anybody have an idea of how much a memory unit cost in a nursing home would be? Well, in Little Waupaca, Wisconsin, it was $13,000 a month for that. So you can imagine how fast money goes when you don't have a plan. So today's topic, Father's gonna give us some advice from a spiritual standpoint, in terms of caring for ourselves, and making sure we do the right planning for that stage of life. And then John is gonna educate on various ways to put a plan together, something that you can personalize to you in case that scenario comes in your world. So with that, Father, would you start us off, please?
Very good. Well, let's pray for our faithful departed brothers and sisters, but also those who are dying. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Just curious, how many of you were here for the first talk? No, just one, two. Okay. I don't really have like a specific talk for that part of the presentation. The only thing I would have to say is that what I said the first time is we are body and soul. We're created in God's image and likeness. We are the temples of the Holy Spirit, as St. Paul teaches us in his letter to the Corinthians. So there's something sacred about our body as well. Our life is not just an accident. We are called to existence for a reason. And so we have to take good care of ourselves, not just of our spirit, which will be mind focused, but also our body. And when it comes to the final stage of our life, definitely you don't want to leave the burden on your loved ones with all the possible expenses. There are many things that we don't have control over, but there are so many things that we can control, and we should take this into consideration when planning for our parting from this world. And so, just the same as I said the first time, we have to make sure that whoever it is you or someone you love, your loved ones in your family, that they are provided for spiritually. Make sure that wherever he is or she is, that there is pastoral care, and if there is none, you can always call the priest and make sure that they receive the sacraments. I mentioned that in the first talk, but very often people at that stage in life, they don't think straight. They may suffer from dementia. They very often are drugged up because of the pain they are going through. So they're not quite in their mind. And so whoever is around should take care of them because they cannot do it themselves. And very often people do need the sacraments, they need to be reconciled with God, but they just don't have the means to do it. So make sure that's always the case. But also, once they die, that we do everything possible for that funeral to be a Christian funeral, a Christian burial. Again, respecting the body of the person, making sure that we follow the prescriptions or the guidelines of the Catholic Church. I mentioned that before. The cremation is allowed, although the preference would be to have the full body at the funeral mass, if that's what we do. And then cremation will take place afterwards, but that's just preference, it's not a requirement. You can have ashes present at mass as well. And then there are some things that some practices just recently that people invented, which is the liquidizing the body and then disposing it or using it as a fertilizer. I'm not kidding. I just talked to home people. That's what they do now. So that's something that the church does not allow. This is not allowed. Cremation is fine, but this liquidating body is not. The green funerals are also allowed, where you have no embalming of the body, and it's buried directly to the earth. That is also allowed by the church. But again, even if in those cases, we still want to provide a person with a Catholic funeral, right? So they can, they should have the mass, the funeral mass. And she was asking me, what's her name?
Vicky?
Vicky was asking me if there's like a scriptural reference to this part of the talk. I couldn't come up with anything except for our Lord's own funeral. He was buried in St. Joseph's, Joseph of Arimathea, grave. He didn't have his own, but he had people who, he knew he could count on. Even though he didn't spend much time in that grave, nevertheless, there were people around who took care of his body, right? So the ladies who didn't have time to do all the prescribed things, rituals, because of the timing of it. He was crucified on Good Friday. They had to do it all before the sunset, because after the sunset was the holy day of obligation, the Sabbath day, so they had to do everything before. But they were going on Sunday morning to fulfill everything else. So as you can see, they were still trying to do everything possible for that to be as their religion required. And so again, we have to do the same for our loved ones. Make sure that they have everything and plan ahead of time, so that it doesn't surprise anyone. And then they have to sell their house and properties to provide for them. Maybe there's a better way of doing it, to the extent that we can, because everybody has a limited possibilities. But it is kind of our responsibility in a sense, not to leave for someone else to worry about it, but we should be worrying about it when we still have the time. So that's a charitable thing to do, and the right thing to do. And if you have any questions, you can ask me anytime. But that's pretty much all I have to say on this occasion. You already covered everything else.
Thank you, Father.
Appreciate it. Great words as always. That leads into this discussion pretty well too, because last workshop we did deal with, we call it an end of life workshop, planning for our spiritual end of life, but also our financial end of life, and how do we get our stuff that we've been blessed with in our lives to our heirs or our church or whatever. And this workshop is kind of going back in time, I would say, before we die, where we may need medical or mental care that costs a lot of money. And so do we want to plan for that? Do we want to put strategies in place, or at least communicate to those folks that may need to be able to, or may need to take care of us at that point in time when our health fails, to at least have a plan and have some direction? And that's really what we'll talk about here today. So thank you all for coming, and there's more food, so if you want to get up and eat, well, I won't feel bad. So, and ask questions too if you got them. That's very important. So I always start out with this question: will you or your parents? And right now I'm kind of not starting, but dealing with my folks. Both my mom and dad are still alive, and they're in their mid-80s. And obviously I can see their health starting to change and all that good stuff. And so this is particularly important to my brother and I, because we know we're gonna be the ones that are gonna have to take care of that. Whether it's care or ultimately when they pass away, and again, because I do this for people, or professionally, we've done some nice planning with them, but will you or your parents be ready financially, emotionally, and logistically? What's logistically mean, you think? Where you live, right? What are the logistics of where you're gonna be, or where are you gonna be able to get care that you might need? And is it, 100 miles away and, in Chippewa Falls when you live in Wausau and go to church in Wausau? So logistically, are we ready when there is a need for long-term care service? The single greatest financial risk that older people face is the possibility of developing disabilities and needing long-term care services and supports, because this care is expensive and there aren't really a lot of options. And so that's what we'll talk about today, or what are some of those options. But more importantly, just having the courage to talk about it. Someone asked, last workshop we had 40 people here. And the crowd is significantly less today. Why do you think that is? People don't want to deal with this. Yeah, they all die. They're at the end of life work. No, that's not true, because those two were here, I know. No, it's a tough topic to talk about. It's hard to talk about, it's hard to deal with, and some people think, well, I'll just kind of deal with it when it happens, if it happens, because it's not for sure, right? We know we're gonna die, so we know we got a plan for that, but this may not happen. But as you find and we talk through, the statistics alone, just the facts, show that is a very real thing for a lot of people. Obviously, we recommend that everyone put a funding plan in place as part of their retirement or estate plan. And that's why, again, this flows very nicely from the last workshop we had about putting an estate and plan together, because I could have the greatest retirement plan in the world, I can have the best estate plan in the world, and if I end up spending $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in a nursing home or for my care, that really affects my retirement and my estate plan at some point in time. And so this is really a vital piece of that. Vicki and I have found in the years that a lot of so-called, or what we call financial planners, who kind of deal with your investments and kind of your retirement income and stuff, many times don't deal with this at all. And we met with someone last night. They felt they had a really good retirement plan and had, their income kind of lined up and stuff. And we asked them, have you done any of this planning? And they're like, no. I said, well, your financial person didn't talk. No, they haven't talked about that at all. So it's not a common thing that even financial planners like to talk about, but it's a real cost, just like health insurance and everything else is going to be in the future too. So think of the long-term care isn't just I'm in a nursing home. It's a stage of life that we all will probably have some part of. 2/3 of Americans over 50 have not made a long-term care plan. That's a lot of folks, okay? 2/3. So like I say, it's not a fun topic, but again, we need to talk about it. 70% of us, and this is again through the longtermcare.gov website, 70% of us will need long-term care services after age 65. So if we got 10 people in the room, 7 of us are gonna need some kind of care. Which of the 3 of you aren't? That guy.
So 70% of people need it, but what does it mean long term? How long is it? How we don't know, like 5 years, 10 years?
Average is 2 to 3.
2 to 3 years.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And that's kind of stages, right? So it's not often we go from I'm okay to now I'm sitting in a nursing home. I'm okay and I got some ailments and now maybe I need some help at home, family, whatever. Then it gets a little worse and now they can't really take care of me anymore. So I'm kind of moving into the different stages of that long-term care. And that's kind of that 2 to 3 year period. Obviously some can be a lot longer than that. Some can be shorter as well. So 90% of married couples will be affected. And here's the good things for you gals in this room, maybe or maybe not, but women obviously live longer and are more likely to need long-term care than men.
I wonder why that is.
No jokes now, please. Well, the true fact is, women are more caregivers than men are, right? And so, if dad is sick and mom's still good, mom's gonna take care of dad at home as long as possible, okay? I'm not saying us guys wouldn't take care of our wives, I know I would do everything I possibly can to do that, but I may not be as good at it. And since women tend to live longer, they're the ones that are left at home alone, not with a spouse to take care of them in a sense. Therefore, you see a lot more women in nursing facilities and stuff because of that, okay? Again, not a for sure thing, but if you go to a nursing home, you will see more women than men, so, okay? 3 goals we'll talk about, and really, this is when I talk to folks and say, is it important to have a plan? So number 1, you can at least control your quality of life, where you go, who takes care of you, those types of things. Number 2, do you want, and are you going to, and do you feel it's right to rely on your spouse and family to provide all that care? So do I want to protect them so that they don't have to take time off work and live with me and stay with me and take care of me? Not that that's bad, but do I want in my plan that that's not what I want to have done? And then third, I mentioned earlier, just protect the estate. Do I want to make sure I have money left when I ultimately pass away that will go to my heirs, will go to my church, whatever my planning is? So let's talk about those. So the goal 1, control your quality of life as long as possible. The number of people 65 and older in the U.S. has tripled in the last century. We're living longer, but are we living better? So we're around a lot longer than we used to be. That makes a difference in what we need to plan for. What triggers the long-term care stage of life? Kind of the top 3 reasons. An age-related limitation, we'll talk about those. Cognitive impairment, we all know what that is. Dementia, Alzheimer's, where maybe our body is perfectly fine, but our mind is starting to go and we're not able to live a normal life on our own. And then a chronic illness, which we'll again identify. So as we age, our frailty increases and the need for care obviously does as well. Chronic disease or chronic problems, there are 60% of people live with these. So these are things that are gonna potentially cause us to have a need for care. Again, I won't read them all, but obviously those aren't good things. Okay, they can be very debilitating and can really cause some problems. The other one would be the first one on my list here, the age-related physical limitations. And the long-term care insurance world, the Medicaid world, has found a way to identify when you're considered entering this long-term care stage of life if you can't perform 2 or more of what are called activities of daily living. So again, I have physical limitations that prevent me from doing the normal things of bathing, dressing, using the toilet, transferring, meaning getting out of bed and out of a chair, eating, incontinence. Did you know most long-term care services are based on this, not necessarily that? Okay, so I may never have a heart disease or anything in my life, but my physical limitations have caused me that I can't live alone. I can't do those things anymore for myself, therefore I need some help to do that. That's why you start to see again the statistics that say, 70% of us may need some care. Well, there's a lot of reasons why that potentially could be, okay? Quality of life questions to ask as you kind of think about this. How will the long-term care stage of your life affect, and this is the logistics side, right? Where you live, where you go to church, where you receive the care. If I have no plan at all, that's kind of up to the whim of where I live and what's available for myself in that particular time. And if who I'm relying on has a plan, or who I'm relying on knows what to do, or has an idea of what my plan is or not, and all the options that are available. And maybe we're saying this the other way too, who will rely on you? Okay? Am I in a situation where my spouse maybe would need that, and am I ready to deal with that? So that's really, again, the logistic and really a lot of the emotional side of this as well, is to have a plan in place. So planning gives you resources to stay in your home longer and receive care there, have more choice in picking a care setting just because you're a little bit more prepared. And again, being less reliant on the government, which we'll talk about the Medicaid program, family members or charities, okay? Goal 2, create resources that give you choices of quality of life, choices for quality of life choices and maintenance. And this is again dealing with who would be taking care of you, who would be your caregiver. How do we protect that? Is your spouse and family your caregiver plan? I've heard this many times. What's your plan for that? My kids will take care of me. Will they? Will they? Maybe. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I have no judgment at all on that. I just hear that. But let's think through that a little bit, because 80% of long-term care services are provided by unpaid caregivers, spouses, kids, family members, friends, at an average of about 20 hours a week. Now think of that if your kids are still working, taking 20 hours out of their week to take care of you. Again, not saying that's bad, okay? But is that our plan? Is that what we're thinking about? A lot of unpaid caregivers say that providing care, again, we know it can be very labor intensive, physically demanding. My father-in-law lived in his home probably 2-3 years after his wife died, and all 5 of my wife's brothers and sisters took care of him for about a year before it got to a point where they couldn't anymore. He's a big dude, okay? My wife couldn't get him up off the ground if he fell, or help him onto the toilet, or whatever it might be. So it was hard work, and eventually we couldn't do it anymore. Again, it's emotional, it's stressful, it's time consuming, can be expensive for the person providing the care, and again, it negatively affects the other parts of their life, career, relationships, those types of things. So I'm not saying that this is a bad plan or a bad thought by any means, and I think most of our kids, if we asked them, they'd be more than happy to take care of us, okay? But are everybody's children, number one, a block down the road? No. Okay? Are everybody's kids retired and have not a lot to do? You know, again, so please don't take this as a negative. It isn't meant that way, but it's just to think about. Because again, some people feel their kids should take care of us, you know, and that's okay. 70% of unpaid caregivers though wish someone in a plan they had, so that they either knew they were going to be that person, or there was other plans in place. Okay? So create resources that give you choices for who takes care of you in your time of long-term care needs. Or if nothing else, provide a funding plan or a plan that gives that caregiver what? Respite care or a relief from that. So maybe I have a plan that says my kids are going to take care of me, but I want to make sure I have a plan that at least 2 days out of the week someone else is coming in, so my kids can do what? Take a break, get away from it, do those types of things. So that's even part of it as well. Then the last part, protect your estate. Again, expenses can consume what we've worked all our lives for. So do we plan on trying to provide dollars to do this so that there is or are some assets left over? Again, a plan is, if I spend every single dime of my assets to take care of me and stuff, that's fine. My kids don't need anything. That's a plan. Again, not a bad plan. That's a plan. Okay, as long as, again, people know that. Or, yeah, I'd really like to make sure my kids inherit, my grandkids inherit something, my church inherits something, whatever it might be. Goal 3 is then how do we do that? Let's look at what the costs are, because we're talking a little bit of numbers now. So annual average long-term care costs in Wisconsin, nursing home for private rooms, about 116 grand a year. Vicki must have took off for a little bit. She said it's more than that now. That's a little bit old statistic. But you can see an in-home health, assisted living, adult daycare is kind of a part-time care that someone can go to. Those costs all, again, typically ramp up to nursing home, okay? Pretty big numbers, right? Average, there's your number, Father. On average, long-term care services are needed for 2 to 3 years, roughly. depending on the ailment, right? What ailment that's pretty serious tends to be a longer stay?
Dementia.
Dementia, Alzheimer's, right? Because the body's kind of chugging along okay, right? They can perform those activities of daily living or get up and get around, you know? But the problem is mentally they can't, you know? That's a tough one. I sure hope, wish that on nobody, but, and I'm sure some of you had to deal with that, but. So anyway, national averages, you know, you look at three years, average of 2 to 3 years, you know, if you added all those together, you're up well over $500,000. Okay? Now, I'm not saying everybody's long-term care costs are $500,000, but these are potential, and if we say, well, I'm not in the nursing home in 2025, but I might be a few years down the road, do you think costs of care is gonna go up or down?
Certainly down.
Probably, right? Pretty good call on that. The other issue that I'm starting to see, and maybe you guys are too, is what's the availability of even having a place to go? And having the people to take care of you. That's becoming, maybe it already is a pretty good issue out there. So again, those are things that all need to come into play. Again, the experts project, whoever the experts are, but the experts project an increase of about 1/3 over the next decade for those costs, and that's not even counting inflation. So again, people need to think, I'm not in the nursing home now, but I sure may be. Again, statistically says one of us, if I'm married, will be there in the future. Suffice to say, the costs aren't going the other way. So, all right, so who pays traditionally for long-term care? Medicare really doesn't pay anything for long-term care. They may pay a little bit of medication, I mean, things like that, real minor things, but it's not anything close to taking care of some of those expenses. Health insurance, no. Plus, most people at that age that need long-term care probably don't have health insurance anymore, do they? Probably have Medicare, or maybe a supplement. But even a Medicare supplement or an Advantage plan really don't cover a lot of those costs, okay? Medicaid, and Medicaid's been in the news a lot lately. Medicaid is the government program for someone who's considered impoverished, meaning you have about $2,000 to $3,000 of total assets before Medicaid will kick in, okay? And then there are some limitations to that as well. And lo and behold, the last one there is you. Your money, you're self-funding, you're putting money away or using those dollars to pay for those bills if you need to at some point in time. So let's talk about Medicaid first of all. To qualify, an individual's entire estate value. So think of an estate value as everything you own. If you own the asset, or half the asset if you're married, that needs to be spent down to about $3,000 of total assets before you can even qualify for medical assistance through the county or the government, okay? If you don't qualify, you need to spend down income and assets to that number. So as long as you have assets over that $3,000 and you're paying bills in these range, you have to spend down those assets before you can again qualify for that care, okay? Medicaid also has what's called a look-back period. And so what this is preventing is kind of someone saying, boy, I just had a stroke and I know I'm gonna probably need some care soon, and you know, right before I step foot in that nursing home, I'm gonna do what?
Give money to the kids.
Give everything away, right, because then I don't own it. Okay, it's not in my estate anymore. Well, that's got figured out real quick. It used to be 3 years, now it's 5. That Medicaid will deny you coverage through Medicaid if you apply and you had given an asset away in the last 5 years. They'll pull it back in. So let's just kind of run through a quick example. Let's say I have a cabin and it's worth, what do we got, 8, 9, 10 people here tonight. So let's say it's worth $100,000 or $200,000. And I say, kids, I'm gonna give you guys the cabin today. I'm gonna put your name on it, I'm gonna quit claim it over to my 10 wonderful children, okay? It's not mine anymore, right? And I have to not have any access or strings to that, because if I do, it's still in my name. So you guys own it entirely. So I do that at the end of this year in 2025. 3 years from now, I have a stroke, I go into the nursing home, I pay my way for the next 3 years, and now I'm out of money. And now I apply for medical assistance and say, I have less than 2,000. Is that cabin protected?
No,
Yes, it is. It's past the 5-year look
well,
back.
that was 3 years, you said.
Well, I said I gave it in 25, lived 2 years, and then gave it away. Yep. So it's protected. They can't go back. But back to your point, I give the cabin to you guys in 25. 2 years later, I go into a nursing home. I pay my way for a year and a half, and I go into a nursing home. Or I pay my way a year and a half, and then I apply for medical assistance. Are they going to grant me any Medicaid? Nope. What they'll do is they'll say, how much was the gift you made? 200,000. If your bill is 100,000 a year, we will not provide medical assistance until you spend what? $200,000 of assets for your care. So timing is very crucial. If your plan is to divest your estate of assets to hopefully get to a point where you have very little assets and now you're on government assistance. So that's kind of how the Medicaid program works, okay? What assets count? Just like I said, income is usually first. So if you have Social Security, maybe you got a pension or something like that, or maybe farm rent or whatever your income is, that's used first to pay your bills. And then any assets after that. So basically anything that you can own. So cash, bank accounts, IRAs, 401ks, life insurance if you own it, investments, property, retirement accounts, all of that has to be spent down. It diminishes your estate's value, and again, if it's my desire to leave some assets to my kids, grandkids, and heirs, that's gonna take away from that number, okay? And that's, because again, you're basically spending all your assets down to a point where Medicaid needs to step in and take care of business, okay? Any questions on that?
The property thing, primary residence excluded, can you explain?
Sure,
that?
great question. If I go into a nursing home and my wife is still living in our house, they can't sell it out from under her. As long as there's someone living there, it's excluded from this spend down. I don't have to sell my house if my wife is still living there. Or I think there's rules on like a disabled child or something as well. Yep. What usually happens though, when that spouse dies? Can they put a lien against that house?
Yes.
They can. They can. So that's what that means, a primary residence, but only primary if there's someone living there and it's your primary residence. So if I have a cabin or I have a townhome in Florida or I have some, farmland or something, that's not excluded from that. Okay?
But still, your primary residence, even if just belongs to you, but since you no longer occupy it, it's not considered your primary residence. It
Right.
has to be.
Right, yep, right. Okay, any questions on Medicaid? Yes, sir.
If you had a life insurance policy for 10 grand, you can't spend that down or you ain't gonna use it, one or the other, right?
Well, if you own the contract, if it has any, you mean the death benefit or the
Yeah.
cash value?
Death benefit.
They will make you sell the cash value, if there is any.
I guess I'm saying, when I retired, the company gave us a $10,000 life insurance
Okay.
policy. I don't pay anything on it. They're just waiting for a death certificate to pay it out.
Yep, then that would be excluded, because there's no value to it until when you die.
Could they come after it then, no?
Typically, life insurance, you can't.
You can't what?
Come back after that. Plus, more than likely, that 10 grand is gonna be used for what? Funeral expenses, right? Maybe. And so the Medicaid and the county systems allow us to actually set aside funds for funeral expenses that are exempt from this spend down. So that's one thing every single one of us in this room can do, is prepay your funeral. If you can use life insurance to do that. And again, if you set it up properly with the wording according to Medicaid, you can protect that asset up to the reasonable and customary charges of a funeral. Well, what did we talk last week? The funeral gal was here. I mean, it's 15, 18 grand. So you could put away a $15,000 or $18,000 life insurance policy, or even a CD or something like that, if it's assigned to a, properly assigned to nursing or funeral home. They don't have to count that in that spend down. So everybody should do that, because not only is your funeral paid for, your funeral's paid for whether you got any money or not. Okay? So that's kind of a first step. If anything, make sure that's at least taken care of, because if you do end up spending all your assets down to $3 grand and then you die and you have nothing, who's got to pay your funeral? Your kids, your estate. Okay, and where's that money going to come from? So that's a kind of a bad situation to be in. So anyway, talk to Vicki about that. She does a lot of work in that area. Trust, I like to just mention trust real quick, because when we talked about a revocable trust last week, or last time we were here, as a great estate planning tool to avoid probate and manage assets and stuff for people, but it is not an asset protection trust. There's no such thing. Okay? Because you control the assets in the trust, it's still part of that spend down that you have to use. Okay? Irrevocable trust, I just read another article today from some attorneys that an irrevocable trust says offers some asset protection, but it's really gray. And what an irrevocable trust is, it's almost like me giving, remember that example I used to giving you the $200,000 cabin as my kids? Instead of giving it to you guys, and then subject to anything you guys might do in your life, divorce, lawsuit, bankruptcy, creditors, I can put it in what's called an irrevocable trust that no one owns other than the trust, okay? And now it's out of my estate. That used to be somewhat of a favorable way to shelter assets from nursing home, but it really don't work very well anymore. And I have many attorneys say, I don't know if I'd put my planning stake in that one. Okay, because what are you really doing? You're kind of hiding stuff to get on Medicaid at some point. And so there are, Vicki, again, talk to her, I'm not going to get into it, but there are a new kind of trust that's built into your will called a supplemental needs trust. That's kind of a neat concept that attorneys are starting to use. It basically says if you're married and you die and your spouse is in a nursing home, that those assets can be deflected into this supplemental needs trust rather into your spouse's name. Because if my wife's in a nursing home and I die, who's the beneficiary on most all my stuff? She is. Okay, well, if she's in there and all of a sudden she inherits a $500,000 life insurance from me, where's it gonna go? All right? Right. So this allows you to say, I'm gonna put that in a special kind of trust that's available to my wife, but it doesn't count against her assets. So again, I'm gonna probably try to incorporate that a little bit more into this presentation next time, but Vicki's got a lot of good information on that. So it's called a supplemental needs trust. Takes a little bit of planning. You'll pay an attorney a little bit of money to create it, but if that's the right tool, it can work. So, okay, any questions on trust? All right. So what are your options to fund long-term care? Well, the first one we said is pay it yourself. We call this self-insuring. You're insuring, or you're accepting the risk of paying those bills at some point in time. Okay? So, which is true, you should be responsible for your bills, I do believe. But this again is saying I'm willing to use, and maybe I have enough assets that it doesn't really bother me. I'm gonna spend them, and I've got enough that's gonna be able to take care of me and leave some with my kids, or I don't. And so some of us fall into the one side, the other side, or in the middle. Pros with that, you get to control those funds for the rest of your life until you do need them. The cons, obviously, is really not protecting any assets. You're depleting resources that you might want to go to your spouse or kids or church or whatever. If you have investments that are in the marketplace, meaning stocks, mutual funds, that type of stuff, if you have to sell it to take care of yourself, you're really at the mercy of what happens, right? Because if you're with that and all of a sudden the market goes way down, you still need the money. You're selling, if you will, at a loss. Okay? And also if you have to do a fire sale. So if I have to sell real estate or property or whatever to pay my care, it tends to go quicker than if you could wait around and get a better price for it. Okay? And then taxes may come into play. If I have to use taxable assets to pay for my care, I might be paying taxes on top of having to pay the care. So now that dollar becomes a little bit more expensive. Okay? But it is a plan. And if it is your plan, tell somebody. Tell your heirs, tell your executor of your estate, hey, Joey, son Joe, if I go into a nursing home, I want you to use these assets to pay my care. Then somebody knows. Okay? And I'm not saying this is a good, bad, or better plan. It's a plan, but just make sure you tell somebody about it. Option 2, you can buy long-term care insurance. Some of us can buy long-term care insurance. So rather than you insuring that risk, you're transferring that risk to an insurance company. Okay? And this is what a plan looks like, is you basically buy a bag of money. Okay? And you have 3 options. You get to choose how big a bag of money you want to buy. So how much do I want in that pot that will pay for nursing home, assisted living, all the things that I might need? The bigger the pot, the bigger the premium. So the more you protect or shelter, the higher the cost of the premium. The other benefit or other thing you need to decide is how much of that pot do I want to cover each time I'm in there or daily. And then there's also what's called an elimination period. So this says if I choose a 90-day elimination, I have to do what for 90 days before this kicks in? Pay my own way. Okay? And at 10, 13 grand a month, if that's the nursing home calling, you know, I got to pay $30,000, $40,000 of my own money before this kicks in. Okay? So that's really basically how they work. Now, long-term care plans have really come a long ways for the worse over time. There used to be hundreds of companies that did long-term care insurance. There's probably 5 or 6 right now that are even viable. Okay? They're very limiting, and here's kind of the pros and cons. It's specifically designed to pay those types of expenses. You can personalize it with certain riders, like an inflation rider that grows the benefit, that type of thing. Okay? The cons, it's expensive. It's not a cheap type of insurance. The other bad part is that your premiums are not always guaranteed. They often increase as you get older, and you pay them forever. Okay, there's not a paid up plan anymore. There used to be, but if you start this plan today, you'll pay it all the way up until you either use it or you die. And if you don't ever use it and die, does anybody get anything? No. Okay, it's gone. So it's kind of an expensive, but it is a way to transfer risk. You do have to qualify for it medically. So remember those chronic illnesses I showed you earlier, the heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, those will kick you out. You wouldn't be able to qualify for the policy because you have to medically qualify too. All right. Now we run across 50%, 40%, some folks have it. Some are good plans, some aren't, and it's, you know, it's just a tough decision what to do with that. Okay. I don't see a lot of people buying it now anymore, though. It just doesn't seem to be the best buy. Okay. But it is a plan, right? It is a way to deflect some of that if you can qualify for it, and you're okay paying a premium that if you never use it, you lose it. You can do that. Okay. Third. Okay.
What is the average cost of this expensive premium?
It kind of depends on age, but let's say I'm 65. I'm not 65 yet, by the way. I'm six. You do that, right? I'm not 65, but at 65, probably a pretty minimal, maybe $100,000 to $250,000.
Couple grand. end.
at
Yeah, the
least
250 was 4,000.
How
4 to
much?
5
I heard
grand.
4,000 a year per person,
Yeah.
when I was talking with a member recently.
Yeah.
How much
4,000
4,000
per year?
per
Yep.
year.
per person.
Still less expensive than 1 month in a facility,
Yep.
but if you never use it, you get nothing of that 4,000 back. And that 4,000 will go up as you age.
Friend of mine had it, and he was paying $600 a month.
Ooh, that's $7,200 a
Yeah.
year, yeah. Yeah, it varies on age, it varies on a little bit of health, but the biggest thing I see too is that it can increase. My folks did this quite a while ago, because they were a really good plan, was unlimited and all this stuff, and so they went and they got that. But now they're starting to get a premium increase notice about every year or two. So now what do?
You can't get one where it's locked in.
No,
Not this type of
And
plan.
if you quit paying, you're done.
right?
We use it.
Right.
And that, all the money you paid in already is.
Exactly, it's
Pay
kind
to
of
use
a
it.
tough spot,
Yeah.
but again, it's a way to do it, it's, you know, you're transferring the risk, but there is a cost to do that.
So if you,
Yeah, please
uh,
ask.
I lost my caboose of thought here. Oh, if you're on one of these long-term plans, then you develop one of these chronic illnesses, are you done for it?
Nope, once you qualify, you're good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, great question. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's what you mean, you gotta qualify to get it, right? So
Yeah.
if you don't have that chronic illness, you'll
Okay.
probably be able to get it. If you got it in the future, then you would be covered.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. All right, option 3, this is kind of a newer option that's out there, but insurance companies, again, they're in the business of you know, providing risk management to folks. Life insurance traditionally is a management of what? Dying too soon and needing things to pay for, or dying with an estate with a large tax and you need to have somebody pay for it with insurance money. But now a lot of insurance companies are adding a rider to the death benefit that says, okay, folks, you can buy a life insurance policy if you need it for the qualifier of 2 activities of daily living or less, or a chronic or terminal illness, and you need it to help pay for nursing home, we'll allow you to take that death benefit out before you die to pay for those expenses, okay? So it's kind of a neat concept for this purpose, is we all know we're gonna die. So if we have a plan that not only pays when we die, or if we need it for long-term care, the money we put into it is gonna go somewhere. So if I buy a life insurance policy with this rider on it, and I put premiums in it every year, and I drop over dead, someone's gonna get that death benefit. So that money isn't gone. I don't use it or lose it. If I do this and over time, oops, I need to go into a nursing home, I can access that money to help pay for nursing home care, which then protects what? My other assets. Or, and this is where I think I like it a little bit better because it really provides choices. If I have my estate, but I have this life insurance policy sitting out over here, and I need long-term care, I can now make a decision. I can use the policy's values to help pay my care. But what do we know about life insurance to beneficiaries? It's tax-free. Okay, so maybe what I'll do is I'm gonna go find my most highly taxable asset to pay my long-term care plan, which is usually what? IRAs, 401ks, or qualified money. Use that to pay for my care because I know what happens when I die. My heirs will get that life insurance policy tax-free. So now I'm playing the game a little better. If my goal is to leave my heirs something, I'd rather leave them an asset that doesn't have taxes tied to it versus an asset that does. So now if I have both, I can make that choice. So if nursing home does come into play, you know what, I'm gonna burn through my IRAs first, because if I do die while I'm doing that, my heirs get the tax-free benefit of the life insurance. Or I can use the death benefit for long-term care, or if I never go in, that's still gonna be an asset that I can pass tax-free. So it's really kind of cool that it covers a lot of different things, and you know the dollars that you're putting into it are gonna go somewhere. One other factor of life insurance, remember that Medicaid spend down where it said, here's all the assets that have to be used? And life insurance is one of them, the cash value, so not this gentleman's example of a term policy, but let's say I have a life insurance policy that I own and it has equity and it has cash value. If I own it, that has to be used for my care, okay? Well, life insurance allows you to name someone to own the policy other than you. So now I could even take it a step further and say, okay, I like that life insurance idea. I'm gonna create a death benefit and an amount of money I can use for nursing home care or replace it. But you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna name my son the owner of the policy. So if I ever get in a Medicaid spend down, do I have to report that asset? No, I don't own it, nor have I ever owned it, so there's no look back on it either. So when we set these up for people, we almost always name a child or someone else as an owner that gets it out of my name, but yet I, as the insured, get to use the benefit for nursing home if I need it, and I, as the insured, get to say who the beneficiary is when I die. So now I can protect it from nursing home along the way. So again, a little complicated, but there's a lot of really, again, cool features to that.
Question,
Yeah.
if you have a lot, annuities,
Mm-hmm.
are those taxes, do the kids have to pay taxes on that? Is it death benefit?
If it's a non-qualified annuity, they pay taxes on the interest you earned over and above what you put in. If they're an IRA annuity, they pay taxes on all of it. So it kind of depends what kind of annuity it is.
And then there's the Roth as well.
Well,
It's a
Roth, yeah,
then-
Roth
Then
annuity
no one
would
pays
be
taxes.
tax-free, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yep.
you'd have to know what kind you have.
Yep. So pros, obviously, again, the other nice things if you compare it to long-term care insurance, guaranteed premiums, so when you buy a life insurance policy and you get locked in at your age, your premiums never increase. They can't, okay? You also don't have to pay them forever. You can let the cash value build in that contract. You don't have to be terminal to access the benefits, meaning you don't have to die to get the benefits. Any unused death benefits paid to the beneficiaries. So let's say you do use a little bit of it to take care of your care, and you were one of the lucky ones and only needed it for 6 months. Well, the rest of that policy goes to your kids or your heirs tax-free. Again, I mentioned the asset protection by having ownership outside of your name. Coverage begins immediately after your first payment. Yeah, I always compare this to kind of long-term care insurance. Cons, there's really not a lot of inflation protection because the policy doesn't really grow a lot over time. And again, you gotta qualify health-wise to get it. So it's not for everybody either, okay? Because you do have to qualify medically. But here's the difference. Long-term care insurance qualifications are more related to what's called morbidity. What's the odds that I'm gonna be incapacitated? What's the odds that I'm gonna have arthritis so bad I can't walk? What's the odds I'm gonna get dementia? Okay? Life insurance looks at mortality, meaning what? How long am I gonna live? So if I have cancer, for example, and maybe I've had it a long time, or arthritis, that isn't really gonna kill me, but it might cause me to need a lot of care. So life insurance, you might be able to qualify for. Just kind of depends, okay? If you can't qualify for any of these, the last option is there are annuities now that if you put money into an annuity is a tax-deferred fixed investment, very safe, grows interest every year. But what these riders do is if I put $50,000 into this annuity, depending on if you qualify, and the nice thing is there's very few medical questions that would even kick you out, you can get up to 2 to 3 times that initial deposit for nursing home care if you want to use it. So example, I put $50,000 in this annuity, it earns interest every year, but if I go into a nursing home, I have access to $150,000 to help pay for my care in a nursing home, okay? Now, this annuity isn't gonna earn, 5–10% interest. It's not gonna earn a lot of interest, but it will earn some. But again, the beauty is what? If I never go into a nursing home or need that care, where's that money gonna go? To my kids, my spouse, my church, wherever I want it to go, okay? And I don't have to use it for that if I don't wanna. So it gives me a little bit of control. This one you can't protect like you can life insurance, though, because you can't really have someone else own your annuity. Life insurance you can.
You have to pay for that extra 3 times the amount?
Nope, it's part of the
Oh, you have to pay
contract.
for that rider?
You don't, because it's part of the contract. That's why I say, if you said, I just want an annuity for investment purposes, I mean, Catholic United right now is paying 5.25% interest, okay? If you bought this product specifically kind of for long-term care, you might be earning 1–2%,
Yeah, I think it's
depending
like
on how old
2
you
or
are.
something, yeah.
Oh.
So they keep a spread, great question, they keep a spread to cover the cost of that rider, okay? But again, if you're using it for long-term care, you're not really so concerned about earning as much interest on it, you want it there to get that 3-time multiplier. But again, if you never use it, it's gonna, that money plus that little bit of interest that's growing every year, it's gonna go to somebody. It's not just gonna poof up in the sky, okay? So pros, most people qualify, there's like 2 knockout questions. You don't have to be terminal, unused portion of your beneficiaries. Again, on certain types, so not all annuities do this, but there are certain types that you can multiply up to 3 times that account value. The cons, usually if you want a $200,000–300,000 pot of money, you gotta come up with $100 grand at once, so it's not a one you put in over time, it's a single premium deposit. You cannot use qualified money. So you can't say, oh, I'll take my IRAs and put them in there. You can't do that. So it would be after-tax funds like CDs and money in the bank or other non-qualified annuities that are there. And again, there may be a waiting period on that, but they're pretty minor, okay?
On that one, if you start the care at home, there's no waiting period, but if you go to a facility, there's a small waiting, a 30-day waiting.
30, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so we looked at really 4 ways to kind of fund. Self-fund, use your assets to pay your way. Long-term care insurance is an option for some. Again, you pay a premium for having a benefit to pay out. The life insurance with the long-term care rider is an option for some, and an annuity is an option for some, depending on, again, the situation that a person's in and what they want to protect.
Is that
Yeah.
a long-term rider, is that something new? Because most of us, if we have a life insurance, we've had it for a long time.
It's pretty new, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
more than likely, we would not have that on ours.
More than
that we have
likely.
existing now.
Yeah, what, maybe 5 years, 6 years?
I don't, yeah, it's not even 5 years that I'm aware of it.
Yeah, I'd say anything probably older than 5 years or 6 years probably does not have that on it.
There could be an accelerated benefit rider, which is a little different. Typically it's tied to terminal illness. You have to be in a facility, and terminal meaning you have less than 12 months to live. And so some life insurance
Yeah, that's a good
policies
point.
have that. So different than what he proposed up here, because this you can actually turn on and turn off. You're in a facility to recuperate. You go home, you can stop the payments and leave the rest of it for whatever. So your older policies might have that accelerated benefit rider. In case you're in a facility terminal, you could potentially access it, but we'd have to look at the policy
Yeah, you wanna
details to
look at it.
confirm that.
Yeah, good question, okay? So 4 options of funding. The 5th option obviously is Medicaid, right? That could come into play for some. But again, we've had to have exhausted either all of these options or ultimately our self-funding, and we've used our funds to take care of business, so. All right, so wrap up, what are the next steps? What's a good way to put a plan in place? All the questions you guys asked are exactly why it's important to sit down and just kind of take a look at where everything's at, okay? Because every single asset you have plays by a little bit different rule, okay? And some assets are better to use than others, and understanding all of those, where the asset exposure is and everything for your specific situation is really the important thing. So again, Vicky's an expert on this stuff and can really help people see where things are at. As we mentioned, Catholic United Financial is a not-for-profit financial services company for Catholics. So not-for-profit means we don't charge a Catholic to sit down and go through this. Keep that in mind. That's a pretty neat service that we provide. There's the part about communication. So once I've kind of developed a plan or some ideas on how I want to take care of things in the future, I need to communicate that to those that may need to take care of me in the future. Because if I have the best plan in the world and nobody knows about it, how is it going to get initiated if there's not somebody there to put it in place? And then put it into action. Follow up, get the plans in place. If the life insurance or annuity or long-term care or any of that stuff makes sense, get it in place as soon as you can so it can start building up over time. Maybe an attorney needs to be involved to update your estate plan and those types of things as we go along. But this is the point in time where it's really important to get a plan started if you don't have anything already. At least explore the options of what we can communicate to our heirs and people or maybe our caregivers at some point in time. All right, any questions? Great questions, by the way, guys, gals.
Well, I had a question related to, my husband died almost 2 years ago, so then I went and redid a will trust.
Okay.
A trust with an attorney,
Okay.
and I asked her specifically, should I pay for my funeral expenses now? She said, no, just wait until you get to the point where you have to go on Medicaid, and then you can set that amount aside and give to the funeral home. And I'm like, and it always kind of didn't feel right, because what if I'm sick and kind of out of my mind, how do
Bingo.
I?
Bingo.
do
No,
that?
we never recommend that. And again, attorneys don't deal with that kind of planning, right? They deal with the wills and the trust. I say do it as soon as you can, because your mind is good, your health is probably better than it will be, down the road, and you have your faculties now to say, I can make a good decision on how I set this up properly. So if I do need it in terms of Medicaid planning, it's already in place.
Yeah.
Okay, rather than waiting and going, oh boy, now I got to do something and maybe I'm not able to, and now my kids got to figure out it gets to be a mess. So I would disagree with that recommendation in terms of get your plan in place today, not today, but today, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future, and if you are prepared, and the beauty of all these plans too, is that they're all flexible. So we can change them in the future if we need to. We can't implement them if we can't in the future. So, great question. Yes, sir.
I've got after I went through my wife's funeral, I know what that stuff costs. So I went out and I got a prepaid funeral. The surprising thing is they do actually pay interest on that, like 2 to 3%.
Some
So
do,
it
yeah.
just keeps growing up. I mean, it's not like, hey, you set that money aside and you'll never see it. Well, you'll never see it, but but I mean, it does grow some for you.
Yes, some.
I think 2 or 3%. I don't know what it was.
Yep. Yep, some do. And again, great option. That's a good idea. We tend to recommend if you are going to do pre-planning or pre-funding your funeral, if you can, again, you didn't do anything wrong, don't get me there, try to set it up in something that doesn't matter where your funeral is. We tend to not like it to tie to a funeral home, because what if that funeral home goes out of business, or you decide you move down to Florida and you die there and you want to be buried there and stuff. So we tend to like to create plans that are portable. Yours will
But
work perfectly.
It's at a different company. I mean, it went through the funeral home to get it, but
Okay.
it's not a funeral home's policy.
Oh, you didn't buy it from the funeral home?
I had a funeral home, well, probably the gal you had here last time,
Oh, yeah.
Peterson
Kramer?
Peterson Kramer.
From Peterson Kramer?
yeah, but they go through a different,
Okay, then I'm good with that. That's
Yeah.
cool.
So-
Yep. Yep. But some funeral homes, you'll actually pay them.
oh,
So you write a check to the funeral home,
Oh.
and now it's tied to the funeral home, and now you lose a little portability. But if you bought it from a funeral home, but it's outside of that realm, it's,
I went to,
it's a good thing.
workshop at Peterson Kramer for my husband. We both went when he was alive 3 years ago. And it was a company outside of Peterson Kramer
Yep.
that gave the presentation. And if you bought it, it was like if you pay it over 3 years
Yeah.
or some,
Yep.
maybe 5 years. But if you
Yep.
died before it was paid off, your funeral was instantly paid for. You didn't have to finish paying for it.
Cool.
So you're kind of like rolling the dice too. But we didn't do that, and then my
Yeah.
husband died.
Yeah,
Sounds
there's a couple good options, but again, what we like to do is, again, look at the big picture. Let's see where all the puzzle pieces fit together. And then what is an option for that exact plan? Maybe it's go to the funeral home and get that, look at all the options first, so, yeah.
How do we convince people that they should have a will? I know so many people
Yeah,
that don't have a will. Oh, I don't need one. And it's like,
If they
I
have a
would just-
checkbook, they have an estate, they need some direction. So basically what you say to them is, okay, so without a will, that means the state of Wisconsin gets to determine where everything you have goes.
Yep.
Are you good with that? If you are, then you don't need a will.
that's what I would say. I don't need a will. Well, then the state of Wisconsin is gonna
well,
determine
and
where
you
your
could go
assets are.
online and you can print off this 6-page thing of your will.
Yeah,
Do those hold up in court? Are they legal documents?
they are if they're notarized and stuff, but I wouldn't.
They're cookie cutter, and I guarantee you, every single person in this room has a different scenario of how your estate is established and what you want done with it. So yes, you can go online and print it out and use that. It's better than not having anything, right?
Yes, yes.
But it is very cookie cutter, and you can't make adjustments, you can only fill in the blanks. And if the blank doesn't really apply, then you put an NA there. So it will work, but,
Yeah, but there's so many other factors to that
Yes.
too. Because there's a lot of assets that you were at the workshop last time. There's so many other assets we have that aren't even part of your will.
right?
So if I say I'm gonna do this cookie cutter will and I'm not even dealing with my other stuff, now what's gonna happen? So the state will determine all
Kids are
of
gonna
that.
start fighting.
Uh-huh, yeah. Any other questions?
Great questions.
Yes, you guys are on the ball, so Vicki, turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for coming and hanging out with us. Nursing home care is definitely not the topic that we all want to talk about every single day, but it is very much a need, and hopefully that's the biggest thing that you'll take away. You need to have some sort of plan, whatever that structure works best for you. And then the communication piece of it. We said that a lot in the last session. When you create your plan, communicate it. Those that you love the most, those that you ask to take a role in your plan after you've moved to heaven, need to understand it before you go. They should hear it from your mouth, not read it from a piece of paper. So that's what I would encourage you. So John and I will be here for a little bit yet, so if you have additional questions, feel free to stop by. The red box at the end of the table is the drawing slip box, so if you want to be a part of the drawing, pop your name in there. I've got a couple little giveaways. As was mentioned a little earlier, there's still sandwiches over there, so, and the pickles, I did try them, they are really good.
I just
Are they though?
wanted to add that this is being recorded. It will be on the stmatthewwausau.org website if you have
Oh,
questions or
wonderful.
want to hear it again. And if you can't find it, call the office and we'll try to guide you to find it, so.
Or if you guys know somebody that thought, oh man, they really
wasn't
should have
you.
been here today, let them know to go on the website and take a peek at their own convenience too. I mean,
Assuming
spend
it worked.
45 minutes with a cold beer and watch the workshop.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
We wanted to-
That's what was missing today.
What?
The cold beer.
There's some of their-
We only went an hour and 8 minutes.